when you're working with on a new project, at what point do you sort of lock in your mind this idea of an ensemble?
Essentially, in my experience, it always starts with a discussion with the creative team first. Sometimes people aren't necessarily sure what kind of ensemble they want. They know what kind of feeling they want. For Devotion, actually, JD, the director, actually did know exactly what he wanted. He wanted a big giant orchestra, and he wanted it as big as possible. So that was already established pretty quickly. But, another project that I've worked on, it was more so like the director was inspired by just different songs. For me, in that situation, I actually sent over like YouTube clips of other pieces, classical pieces, jazz pieces, things like that, to help inspire the director. And so that's what started the discussion. And then it was decided, okay, the ensemble will be a combination of these sort of things. You have a bit of orchestral, and then you have a bit of like, synthesizers and things like that. And then a little bit of vocalization, like sound effects kind of stuff, that kind of thing.
You're saying that this director was musical or is very
exactly
musical,
yeah,
and they can imagine what that's going to sound like. And a lot of directors can't, and they shouldn't be expected to. I mean, that's asking a lot of them. I think they used to, that's how they used to do it. John Williams used to sit and write piano stuff for Steven Spielberg, but nowadays I feel like they get very sensitive to the palette and even what samples you're using for the mock-ups, and like you find out quickly, oh, they don't like the flute, like stuff like that. You find out in your sketches. Yeah. But I don't know if I'm interrupting, but I feel like one, I don't know, Chanda and Jay, but for me, before I decide what instruments, first of all, how much money do I have? That's going to be a huge, because I do think that every score should have at least one live track, and unless it's a very electronic sounding thing, I feel like every cue needs at least one live instrument in it.
What I would say, I think that's really important as we drift into the idea of hybrid scoring, and it seems like everything I do is hybrid. I mean, I don't know even if I had the budget and have had full orchestra, there's still other things in there. But it's teaching young guys and young women, young composers that your sample library is as much a different instrument as a violin is to a trumpet. You have to learn that library. And I always say, if there are 100 things a real violin can do, just picking a number, there's 10 that the sample can do. And so you have to write for those 10. If you're going to use if you're using that sample library in your final, you have to write for those 10. And if you can't do that, then you have to get a player. And that's okay. And so you have to your question, Eric, earlier, at some point fairly early in the process, I figure out like, okay, I'm going to have the clarinet and the violin are going to be my main melodic instruments, and I'm going to hire real players to stack on top of my fake stuff if it's a small budget for those things. And they'll often come to my house and do it. I just set up a mic and we do it in my room. And so there's studio's not there, so I have more time with the players and maybe more players that way. And that's usually for me, somewhere in the first third of the score, I've figured out, okay, this is going to be my main stuff.